Mark Rogers TV back in the ACC, tracking down Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat to help us sort out this Georgia Tech secondary. And Joey, I have no idea who's going to play in the backfield for Georgia Tech this year. We were talking about it just a few minutes ago. Tons of guys with serious playing experience gone. Jamal Golden, 10 career picks, gone. Damon Smith, 51 tackles last year, 2.5 tackles for loss, gone. DJ White, of course, been a starting corner pretty much since he stepped on campus, practically gone. Chris Milton as well, gone. Not a whole lot of guys that have a track record. Unfortunately, college football fans learn their secondary because they get burned and they get to see the guys running down the field chasing other guys. And hopefully that's not how Georgia Tech fans are going to learn your secondary this year.
Yeah, you got to hope so. But like you mentioned, I mean, you got to replace all 4 starters from last year, which is a little bit of an intimidating task. The most experience that you bring back are Lawrence Austin, who was your starting nickel corner, and A.J. Gray, who kind of flipped between safety and that nickel corner spot, but also as a backup coming off the bench. So, you hear a lot of talk about secondary continuity is very important for the success of a defense. And so that is one thing that Georgia Tech has pretty much none of going into 2016, which is a little scary to think about if you're a fan. And you figure that it's going to result in some painful moments at some points during the season.
Yeah, if you think about it, the offensive line is like none other on the field in terms of needed cohesiveness amongst the players up front. But after that, sure, you need the defensive line to be in sync if they're running stunts, if they're shooting gaps. But at the same time, hey, if somebody doesn't make a play, there's a guy 3 steps away. In the secondary, boy, it's a lot of grass out there, a lot of field. And if they're not in sync in regards to, and we see it every Saturday and Sunday, even in the NFL, secondaries getting mixed up in regards to coverages and guys being left to make big plays. So, boy, they're going to have to sort out a lot here in August.
Right. You talk about it, especially when you start talking about zone coverage and guys got to pass off somebody to the guy behind them and all this, and combine that with, like you mentioned, I mean, this is your last line of defense. So it's kind of a high stakes sort of position where they can end up making picks and creating turnovers and some of these big plays, while also they can allow some of these big plays that can be really damaging to a team within a game and within a season. So you got to have a lot of guys that need to grow up pretty quickly this year, and you're going to be pushed into roles that maybe they I don't know if they're ready for, or if they certainly haven't filled before. So Ted Roof and his staff have an important job in front of them to get this secondary ready to contend with some ACC secondaries, or ACC receiving corps, excuse me.
So, Joey, you mentioned Lamont Simmons before we hit the record button, signed by USC. So we assume that guy's talented. If he was signed by Southern Cal, any other guys that at least you know the name and you can give us some kind of broad stroke on what we can possibly expect? Yeah,
Simmons was signed by USC. We should make sure that we specify here that this is Southern Cal. So the Trojans. He's from Jacksonville originally, so you figure maybe he wants to come a little bit closer back to home. A guy that the coaches really like. He's a bigger corner. I think he's over 6 foot tall, so a little bit better maybe going up against some of the bigger receivers that they'll face. Don't know if he'll start for sure, but certainly a guy that should see a lot of time. Step Durham is the kind of the go-to number 1 corner coming into this year. He was the number 3 guy behind White and Milton in previous years. One of the better players on the defense, so should get a lot of action and should hopefully impress some folks that hadn't really heard his name or gotten familiar with his name in previous years. And then A.J. Gray, as we mentioned before, is returning. He's a safety. He is a guy that has been very highly touted by Coach Johnson himself. He said something at the ACC kickoff about how Gray has the potential to be one of the best defensive players in Georgia Tech's history. He's a guy that has a lot of talent. He was a Gatorade All-American, Player of the Year as a senior in high school. Somehow only a 3-star recruit. Fans will love to babble on and on about how it's just a subscriptions thing with the recruiting services and whatever. Who knows? But point being, he is a very high potential guy in that secondary. Everyone will remember Lance Austin's name. He was the one, of course, who ran back the kick on the Miracle on Techwood Drive. He comes back. Between him and Simmons is probably one of your starting corners there. It would be interesting to seeing him in that role. He hadn't spent a lot of time on the field, especially in main coverage roles. So he's another one that'll need to grow up. And then other safety role, probably between Corey Griffin, Sean Kagawa. One of those guys will probably fill the strong safety role, whereas A.J. Gray probably more the free safety. Only other name to keep an eye out for is Christian Campbell. He was a former quarterback out of Louisiana. He changed positions this spring to the safety position, so very, very good athlete, very, very rangy. Should be interesting to see if he gets some time and how he starts fitting into that safety role and playing defense instead of offense.
So, of course, most notably Clemson and North Carolina with a ton of speed and talent on the outside on the schedule, and a number of other teams to deal with as well. So it's going to be an interesting August trying to sort out the secondary for Georgia Tech. And let's credit Joey here for getting us caught up on the names, at least, that we can go into the season and try to figure out who's making plays for the Yellow Jackets. Georgia Tech's secondary sorting things out. Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat. Joey, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.